Not too many performers can write a memoir that includes Sting, Kiss, Bryan Adams, Gene Autry, James Brown, Red Robinson, Clint Eastwood, J-Lo, Tommy Chong, the DJs and radio radicals that once woke us up in the morning, and the Mounties who gave us the odd ticket. That is why TDM is not tedious. He is Terry David Mulligan, actor, performer, father, and mature music man. He's finally written his memoir. He calls it Mulligan's Stew. It is my pleasure to welcome Terry David Mulligan to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Do you know 4 is my lucky number?
See?
So this is big.
It's kismet.
It is beautiful.
and we do go back.
Yeah.
I don't think I was at CKLG when LSD was coming in the back door.
I don't think
or
so.
Or C-Fun, or one of those radio
Where were you?
stations.
Were you not part of that revolution?
I was, but I was down the street at Talk Radio.
Oh, of course.
And there was no pot that I recall.
Come on.
Only in the newsroom.
It was a giant cloud hanging over this city.
There were a lot of clouds in those days.
Yeah, they were.
Mm-hmm. So you, back to Kamloops beginnings?
Well, I grew up in North Vancouver, which is, you know, on the back of the book it says the journey from Skunk Hollow, which is my section of North Vancouver, off Fell, to 10 Chickens, which is what an app called Penticton misspelled it. Every time I said the word Penticton, it spelled 10 Chickens. So it was all about that journey. So, but Kamloops was where my father had to get us out of North Vancouver. We were going to be in big trouble. We were there were gangs. It was a nasty time, and we ended up in Kamloops. And for him, it was like Yankee Stadium. To be a game warden in Kamloops is to really to be in Disneyland for hunters.
Well, you also said in here that your dad was a bit of a tough nut.
Oh.
I don't know what you called him, an old scratchy goat or something like that. But you're more like your mom than you are your dad, or the good parts of you are more like your mom.
I am my mother. I am, in fact, my mother. She and I were great pals. And it was always that she was my teacher and my learning process. My father was constantly in the bush as a game warden, and I didn't see that much of him, and when I did, it was always confrontational, which is not unusual for relationships. But my mom was phenomenal. One of the very first Avon reps, managers in the province of British Columbia.
Really?
Yeah, when it first came out. And
the
she said,
Avon lady was your mom?
But she went door to door, and then she worked her way up to a management position. So I'd go on the road with her, doing Avon.
How great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the Fuller Brush Man too, did you?
No.
You didn't?
I don't remember that.
Watkins Vanilla?
No.
See, I grew up in the States. Maybe you didn't have the Fuller Brush Man here.
No, we didn't. We had a knife sharpener guy who was scaring the local kids. That's about it.
And the vacuum cleaner salesman.
Yeah, all that, sure.
Of course. When did you catch the acting bug? Before you caught the cop bug, or after?
Yeah.
How did it all work?
It was in high school because I was painfully shy, but I realized if I could do that, if I could get on stage and act in front of all my peers, then I would be far more confident around women, young women. And it sort of worked. It sort of worked. It just made me more confident. If I overcame that fear. I was also the guy who did the announcements at lunchtime over the PA.
Really?
The chess club is meeting in room, whatever. So obviously, and I did the dance club Friday at noon in the gym playing records. So why didn't I follow that? I don't, because the Mounties were my way out of Kamloops. The Mounties were a great tradition, and I love I'd been around the Mounties most of my life, and I just love the idea of serving the country via the RCMP. And it got me out of Kamloops.
And it got you to places like Olds, Alberta.
Yeah, Olds, Alberta.
That too.
Yeah, it's true. And I didn't think about Olds. Even though I was a Vancouver kid, I loved Olds, and I loved the characters in Olds. Red Deer wasn't so much of a delight. Being the junior member up there meant that you had to attend most of the autopsies.
Well, true. And being a Mountie in a small town, as you know everybody, and everybody knows you. How did you train to become a Mountie in those days? Did you go to Depot and go through all the things the cops do today, or was it easier?
No, it was 9 months long, and the whole idea behind going to Regina Depot Division was to they would break you down over the first 5 months. They'd literally break you down and then start to rebuild you in the person that they wanted. You were still there, your personality was still there, but you were a much tougher person when you came out. More importantly, you knew exactly how far you could be pushed mentally and physically. And at the age of 20, that's a big deal.
Sure. And everybody's proud of you. Your family thinks you're swell. And
Sure.
then you say to the family one day and to your fellow Mounties, guess what?
Yeah, I phoned my father and said, Dad, I'm going to leave the RCMP. I'm going to leave the force. To do what? I'm going to be a disc jockey, Dad. And he hung up and didn't talk to me for a year.
Really?
Yeah.
And did you have a gig, or were you just hoping?
No, I was Mr. X. Hal Weaver, the disc jockey, my Wolfman Jack at CKRD in Red Deer, he and I did a demo tape, and they hired me, and there was this period of 2 or 3 months where I was a Mountie and a disc jockey. So I became Mr. X. But I mean, and the Mounties knew that, and they were not happy.
No.
And the listeners knew it, and they were not happy. So it was only for me. I was doing the show just for me. I wouldn't trade those months for anything in the world because nobody was listening. I was just screaming. I was making all of the mistakes that I had to make in order to be ready for the next gig.
And what did you learn from Mr. Weaver about radio?
Wow. That it was more than just spinning records. Hal Weaver would show up, even though nobody would see him. He would show up in a 3-piece suit, pinky rings, chains, coiffed like Jerry Lee Lewis, curly blonde hair, and would throw the records up in the air and catch them and put them on the turntable, and we would be talking while he queued them up and hit that fade in the post. It was the most gorgeous verbal choreography. And I went, oh yeah, that's how it's done. And he just taught me that there was glamour to be had, even though nobody would ever see the show.
Who told you said your name too much? Was that Mr. Weaver or Red Robinson or someone?
No,
you kept saying, and I'm Terry David Mulligan.
No, actually, there was the first general manager said, well, your name's too bulky. You can't use it. Nobody uses 3 names, and this one's too long, and people won't remember it. Call yourself Brad Starr or something. I went, no, but it's my name. I don't know why I said it's my name. Let me just use my name. Well, why 3 names? Well, because my uncle is Terry Mulligan, the original, so they called me Terry David. So I'm okay with that. Is that okay? So fine, go ahead, and you'll probably get fired for it.
But you didn't, but you did get fired. Who doesn't in the business? We get hired to get fired.
I got fired for playing I Got You, Babe by Sonny and Cher over and over.
And you met Cher, too.
I did. I asked her for a loan.
Really?
I said, can I borrow some money?
Really?
Yeah.
Did you make that up?
No, she was
Did she
flush.
give you any?
No, she was in her studio, and she was flush. She was right at the top of apex of her career, and I just thought I asked for it. It was just something to break the ice.
So when did you start to just love radio?
Right off the get-go. As soon as I hung around Red Robinson and those guys, and Latrimo and Tanner and J.B. Shane and those guys, and when I realized that I wasn't going to be a formula guy, that was this is, I couldn't find myself in that genre. I didn't have the voice for it, but I had some character, and I thought, okay, let's just follow the character. You're not going to talk into a microphone and blow speakers away. Let's give them something besides just the time and the temperature. And I caught real hell for that, for actually daring to actually impart myself into the format. And I finally found a way through it. They said, we'll give you a 15-second break here and a 15-second break here, which I expanded into 30s. But in fact, it took me forever to find a place in radio because I didn't fit.
Because you were riffing too much?
I was riffing too much, and radio was extremely structured. The suits had taken over radio. LGFM, which became CFOX, was a beautiful extension of that. It was the first rock and roll FM rock station in Canada, and I was swept away with that.
How many stories couldn't you tell?
Oh my God. Well, I'm protecting some people here because it was a wild ride. It was unbelievable. And I can only tell a couple. I can't tell the rest of them because some of those people are mothers and fathers. And
yes, and still alive.
Yeah, they are.
Character actor that you are.
Yeah.
First audition, first real gig, was it McCabe and Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, I think it was. No, it was either that or
Robert Altman?
No, it was Robert Altman and McCabe, Mrs. Miller, and we're shooting up on Cypress Mountain, and he's one of the first directors to allow his actors to live on set and become the characters and create the town, which is what he built the town. And they said, you can stay here, live here, be part of this. And everybody bought into it, everybody.
I think my friend Linda Sorensen was in McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
If not, she was in the next film because she worked a lot.
Yes, she did, and she loved Altman, and Apparently he loved her.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know for sure. We won't go there.
Okay.
But the Buffalo Coat story in here, was that in McCabe? You and the
That
Buffalo
was McCabe,
Coat,
Mrs. Miller, yeah.
staying in character?
Yeah, and we were up, they had found a small abandoned sort of town in the middle of a lumber yard up near Squamish. Somewhere up that way. It was cold and wet and miserable. And it was the scene where McCabe rides into town to get the hookers. And they built a bar. And I'm in the barn in a Buffalo coat with a whole bunch of other actors because they don't need us. We're just extras. And we're smoking a doob. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's snowed. They have to recreate the snow that melted from the night before. And then I get this page, Mulligan to the bar. And all of a sudden, I'm thrust into the bar scene. He's going to frame the shot of McCabe coming into town so that my whiskers and my thing would frame up the shot. And Altman says, give the boy a drink. And they made their own whiskey on set. That's the kind of a set it was. And so if he had given me a line, I couldn't have functioned.
So you went on to other things.
I did.
You did.
I did.
More radio. And you were you Canada's first VJ?
No, well, no, I think
Close.
I think the Much Music crew had opened about 6 months previously, that original bunch. But we were a close second. No, I think the distinction goes to Much Music initially. Yeah.
So take me back to the CBC, those days on
Well,
Good Rockin'.
Well, we were, Good Rockin' Tonight was a bigger hit in my head than it was at the CBC. They didn't know what they had. They really didn't know what they had. It was a huge success. Yeah, because I was out in the street and I knew people were telling me, love that, love that, love that, love that. And they were talking about it at a time when there was no social networking, so to speak. People just came up and shook your hand and said, thank you for doing that. And all it was Ken Gibson, the producer, and myself trying to figure out how to get rock and roll on television. And the CBC finally bought it. And we did Good Rockin' Tonight. And to this day, I still have people stop and say, thanks for doing that. Thanks for that show. That was my rock and roll fix when I was living in Williams Lake and there was no rock and roll fix.
It's one glorious thing about working at the CBC. I did, you did, and many who we know have. Yeah. And they do hear you in the hinterlands. And
it's everything.
They see you in the hinterlands, and I shouldn't call it all hinterlands, but it is. I used to get people calling me who said, we were in our logging trucks, and you're the only thing we could get.
Yeah.
Not that you're the best.
Yeah.
It's just
no,
we couldn't get anybody else up here.
But you do get them through, and you realize how important music is in their lives.
So music biz,
Yeah.
the ins and outs, the downs and ups. When we come back, we'll talk about that. Who makes it, who doesn't. I know you have some great Bryan Adams story. And did you room with Joni Mitchell?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Woke up to Joni Mitchell playing the guitar?
Well, Chuck was there too.
Chuck Berry?
Chuck Mitchell,
You named
her husband at the time.
Oh, the husband. Okay, we'll come back with Terry David Mulligan.